Alrighty guys, welcome to another video for anatomy and physiology. In this video lecture, we're taking a look at the pituitary gland. So what I have highlighted here should be familiar to you from previous lectures. We have the hypothalamus. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take away that, tissue. Let's hide it. So there's a hypothalamus. And this will be familiar to you from previous videos also, like I mentioned before. This is your nuclei. So these are all concentrated nervous tissue where there's a lot of processing having to be done. So in the context of the endocrine system, okay, so as you watch the previous lectures, the endocrine system, it's a vast network throughout the body that is networked through various glands, organs in the body to secrete hormones. Now, this is one of the central places in the brain where hormones are produced and also released. So, with the hypothalamus, just below the hypothalamus, you have what's called the pituitary gland. So, the pituitary gland can be split up into two portions, and as you can see here, just to kind of be able to better navigate what I'm looking at. So, this is the anterior portion of the brain, and this is the posterior. So, zooming back in here, this is the pituitary gland, so that would make this the anterior pituitary, and this would be the posterior pituitary. Now, this is the posterior lobe. Now, in this video, we're going to highlight the posterior lobe. So each of these secretes different hormones, and so with the posterior lobe, this one is different from the anterior lobe, and that this one has a direct neural connection to the hypothalamus. So this is nervous tissue, direct nervous tissue connection with hypothalamus to the posterior pituitary. Now the anterior pituitary, that's got a different type of connection to it, where it's more a system of capillaries. So we're talking about blood flow, tiny little capillaries that connect on the hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary. And it's actually much more extensive in the sense that it has a lot more, it carries a lot more workload than the posterior pituitary. Not to say that it's more important, because they're both equally important, but this one has a lot more hormones that we're going to deal with in a separate video. So again, going back to the posterior pituitary, again, this is a direct neural connection. Now this part of the endocrine system is called the infundibulum. So again, this part has the nervous tissue connecting posterior to the nuclei and hypothalamus, and this part, the stalk, infundibulum, has capillaries. So the infundibulum, or the posterior pituitary, has connection to two particular nuclei. The first one, let me locate them here. The first one is called the supraoptic nuclei, okay? And then secondly is called the paraventricular nuclei. So paraventricular and the supraoptic nuclei, these two nuclei secrete two different types of hormones. Okay, so for example, the supraoptic nuclei produces what's called antidiuretic hormone. Okay, and both of these are secreted by posterior pituitary. So antidiuretic hormone, and then the paraventricular nuclei releases what's called oxytocin. All right, so let's dive into what these hormones actually do in the body. So as mentioned before in the previous videos, just to maintain the context here, that the endocrine system has to do with chemical messengers. So we're talking about be it nervous tissue, neurotransmitters, or in this case hormones that are going to go to a specific target organ, and they have very specific jobs that they do in the body. So with antidiuretic hormone, for example, ADHD, or ADH actually, ADH, antidiuretic. So if you look at that word carefully, it kind of tells you what it does. Antidiuretic. So it increases water retention in the kidneys. So it reduces the amount of urine that you will let out, helping the body prevent dehydration. So if you're like stuck in the desert or something, and your body is low on water, it's going to prevent the kidneys from secreting more fluid and urinating. It also functions as a brain neurotransmitter. Now we're not going to get too deep into that part. Actually, this is more neuroscience. So essentially what you need to understand about antidiuretic is that its target organ is the kidneys, and that it prevents you from excreting more water to prevent dehydration. So secondly, we're looking at now oxytocin. So oxytocin again is produced in the paraventricular nucleus, and so it has a variety of reproductive functions, anywhere from both stimulating arousal on both sexes, to stimulating uterine contraction, helping the semen to be transported in the female tract. It also aids in bonding for partners, contractions during labor to push the baby out. It also aids in lactating mothers to produce milk for the infant, and it also promotes emotional bonding between the infant and the mother. Some studies have been shown that uh, when a mother is lacking oxytocin, they're more prone to neglecting their infant. So it's really quite fascinating what this gland does. So again, it comes from the paraventricular nucleus, and it travels uh, to the posterior pituitary in the brain. So that's going to do it for our pituitary gland, or the posterior pituitary gland in any case. And thanks for watching, guys, and good luck in your studying.